Good morning, Crime Talk aficionados. This is Scott Reisch. Thank you for tuning in as we go live today. I know I said we were going to go live about 30 minutes ago, but I've been in the office early morning and things come up in the practice of law that sometimes don't always end on time. Things always take longer than you think they will, but thank you for sticking with us. Thank you for being here. We do appreciate it. We know that none of this would be possible without you. I think I mentioned the other day that we just went over 10 million views and 63,000 subscribers, which is great. Something I never thought we would have achieved, nor was that initially the goal. The goal was initially when we started this to make sure that people receive more information about what the legal system works, why things take place, because you just don't usually get that on the evening news when you have, a young reporter who talks about things that, frankly, they don't know much about. So, obviously, this week we had the Amber Geiger trial going on down there in Texas, Dallas, and wow, I think the first thing that jumps to mind is obviously it was a guilty verdict, and based upon her own words, Amber Geiger should have been found guilty of murder because she said she was going in to kill whoever was in there. A couple of the interviews by the jurors said, "Hey, it was a no-brainer. We were going to find her guilty of murder." And then the sentencing phase, Botham, John's brother, who gets up there and obviously is feels terrible about the death of his brother, but yet still forgives Amber Geiger and asks to hug her. I have never seen that ever, and I've talked to other attorneys, and they too had never seen anything like that before at a sentencing hearing. Now, Dallas or Texas is a unusual state where the jury can impose the sentence, something other than, for example, a death penalty case. And, the jurors have to unanimously agree. And the jurors said there were, people that wanted the high range, and what they could unanimously agree upon was at least 10 years. I mean, her, she killed somebody, took a life. I mean, we've talked about this. There are no winners when it comes to trials like this. Yes, part of the sentencing phase of any, decision is to punish the wrongdoer. But then you also have to look at the bigger picture. are they going to be a danger to the community? Do they have something redeemable about them where they can, move on and, for lack of a better term, kind of grow from the situation? I was surprised by the 10 years. I really, really was. I thought that was extremely low. I think if a judge had imposed a sentence, it would have been probably, right around 50 years, between 40 and 70. But I think that people in this criminal justice system that deal with that kind of thing on a more of a daily basis, they kind of know that that's where the sentencing ranges are. Jurors don't necessarily know that. If you'd been found guilty in Colorado of first-degree murder, it's life without parole. You go to immediate sentencing and the victim's family says something, and the defense usually says nothing because it'll be an appeal, and off you go. That's it. So that's the law that's in Dallas or in Texas, and so they made their decision. No one's going to second guess it. That's the decision that they had to make, and that's the way it is. It's over. I don't think there's anything that needs to be done or is going to prevail on appeal at all. I mean, it's not a whodunit. The trial, for the most part, was rather clean, and I watched nearly all of it. I didn't see anything that was so outrageous. The judge's conduct, I've never seen a judge. I've seen a judge cry at a sentencing. I've never seen a judge cry mid-trial. If that's the kind of thing where she couldn't remove herself from it, maybe she should have recused herself. But I think that her rulings were overall rather sound and consistent, and that was, she gave a fair trial. So that's where we stand on that. So let's take a look at the chat here today and see what people would like to talk about. Obviously, a lot of stuff going on in the world. We've had a lot of, we've seen a lot of stuff about the Chris Watts case. There's a new book that's supposed to be coming out Monday, in fact, and we may have something to say about that, but it'll be curious to see stuff, and I can't go into great details, but, I'd just say keep watching, and we'll go from there. So let's go ahead and, this is your time to basically ask Scott anything. And we did receive, hey, Kyle, who sent us the mugshot today of the CrimeTalk mug with with their pet? Iko the doggo had their crime shot, their mug shot with the CrimeTalk mug. How cool is that? See if I can hold this up. See? Let's see. Can y'all see that? There's a mug shot. The mug shot with the CrimeTalk mug. That's why everyone should get one. Even your dogs. Let's see. Crazy freaky. Let's see here. Oh, the Frazee trial. That begins in 2 weeks, I think it is, down in Teller County. Yesterday we talked about that on kind of our daily update, and the defenses basically said they're going after Crystal Lee Kenny as the person that killed Kelsey Barrett. And so that's going to be interesting because Crystal Lee Kenny, the nurse, is going to be up there saying, no, I may know all these intimate details. He may have asked me to do all these things, but he's the one that really did it. And so we'll see how she comes across on the stand. It's going to be it's going to really what's come down to credibility. Did she do it? Did they do it together? Or was it just Patrick Frazee regarding that? But at least, well, I think based upon their disclosure, which you have to do when you provide your notice of defenses, which you're required to do, you have to list everything. General denial, if there's any affirmative defenses, any alibis, those all have to be put out there. And so, although there was no alternative defense necessarily ordered, it's clear that I think from the defense that they're going to go after Crystal Lee Kenny as the real killer, I guess assuming they're conceding that she is in fact dead. We haven't seen, or at least it hasn't been released to the public, the results from the what they believe to be a tooth that was found on the property of Frazee as far as DNA. So that will be one of the more important things. But jury trial, that's going to start in a couple of weeks. The 28th of October, the jury selection process, that's going to be interesting. Teller County is a very small courthouse. The courthouse itself, I'd have to take a look at it, but I think it was built maybe around the turn of the century. It's small. It's very rustic. It's very cool courthouse as it relates to, these modern monstrosities that are all exactly the same. It has a lot of character to it, but it's a small courthouse. It's a small county. It's not a lot of people there. And so we'll be able to see whether they'll be able to find enough jurors. In a big city, that's not a problem. But in a smaller city, towns, counties, with not a lot of people, it's going to be very, very interesting that see if they can find people that haven't made up their mind about the case. We've talked about this previously. It doesn't necessarily matter if you know about the case. It's whether you formed an actual opinion about the case. And that's why when we were talking about the Amber Geiger trial last week, it was more, hey, take a listen to this trial. Don't form any judgment until you actually, hear all the evidence, and it's harder than you think. I mean, a trial is like a tennis match, back and forth. One side scores 1 point, other side scores a point. There's little volleys back and forth, and every now and then somebody scores an ace, but for the most part, it's you have to wait till the end to see, and it's not over until the very end. All right, let's see. We got a couple of questions here on the chat. Hi, Scott. Please talk about the death penalty and recent execution in Missouri. What do you think? Well, BLAWLOR 100. What are your thoughts about it? What should I be thinking about it? He was executed with a rare medical condition. Oh, he had the brain tumor. This is the guy, yeah. Okay. So the death penalty is obviously a hot button issue for some people, lots of people, okay? Some people are absolutely believe that the death penalty is wrong based upon moral reasons. And this subject has come up a lot in the past, okay? There's morality, and then there's legality. And sometimes it is completely different. Morally, what should you do, okay? If you do something wrong, should you go and confess? Morally, yes, and repent and take your lumps and move on from it. Legally, it says no, you guys have to prove it. The government has to prove it. So morally, is the death penalty wrong? Some people are absolutely abhorrent by it. I know people that do death penalty cases. I've done one case where it was going to be a death penalty case, and I certainly didn't want them to kill my client. He was actually a really nice guy, but he was ultimately convicted of some really bad things. We convinced the district attorney not to go death, and we presented a lot of mitigation. And the district attorney believed that a jury would not, in fact, go death on the case. But the reality of it is the death penalty is the law in most states, and it's the law in federal courts as well. It was outlawed for a while. In the late 70s, because it was deemed to be cruel and unusual punishment. And there was a case, we talked about it, we've got a video about it, I'd have to go back and look, where basically it was a case, I believe, in Arkansas, and I have to go back and look. I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but in that particular case, I went live and I said, the Supreme Court has completely changed the death penalty law effective immediately. And in that particular case, the defendant that was going to be executed, he had some sort of rare condition and basically like some sort of boils or something on his skin. And they were concerned that was going to be it was going to be painful for him to receive the injections to be put to death. And the Supreme Court said, you are entitled to a execution without cruel and unusual punishment, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it is pain-free, because that was how a lot of cases were, delayed as it relates to the execution, was because it was going to inject, pain. Electric chairs, not a big thing of, not many of those used anymore, but it was lethal injection. It was going to be painful. The people were going to suffer. And the Supreme Court, in the case in Arkansas, ruled that yes, it can't be cruel and unusual punishment in the sense that they're going to torture you, but it doesn't mean that you're entitled to a pain-free death if it's the death penalty case. So that's the kind of thing where, like I said, I appreciate the question, but some people are either so adamant for the death penalty, some are so adamant against the death penalty that no matter what you think or the facts are, people aren't going to budge. They form their opinion, and that's it. But I've said this before. I'm a realist, okay? That's the law. And let me hold on one second. If you pull down the handy-dandy Constitution, okay? And, I mean, this is what really matters. This is the law of the land. But if you go to the Fifth Amendment, which states, and I'll just read it in full here, it says, "No person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime unless on presentment of an indictment of a grand jury, except in cases arising in the land or naval forces or in the militia when in actual service in the time of war or public danger, nor shall any person be subjected for the same offense to be twice put in jeopardy or life or limb, nor shall be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against himself, nor be deprived of life, liberty, or property without the due process of law, nor shall private property be taken for the public use without just compensation." So, if you look at the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution, it says the government can, in fact, take your life, your liberty, and your property, but they have to give you due process in that. And if it's a death penalty case, I assure you, you get super due process, okay? Everything is checked. I mean, the motions that are filed, the evidence, everything that everybody goes through, the appellate review, the post-convictions relief, that is, you get hyper due process in a death penalty case to see if there's something else in there. But it's the law. So once again, a lot of people don't like things in the world, and states can say, we're not going to have the death penalty. The federal government still has the death penalty. I don't see that ever going away, at least not in my lifetime. And, for example, when the bombers in Massachusetts, the Boston Marathon bombers, Massachusetts didn't have a death penalty. Well, they were charged in federal court. And guess what? The people in that jury pool came from Massachusetts, and they said, yeah, death penalty was good to go. So, that's where it is. It's like lots of things as it relates to the law. It's the law. Obviously, the legislature makes the law. They're supposed to be our representatives to go and say, make these laws, protect us from the bad guys. The executive branch is supposed to enforce the laws. Even if they don't like the laws, they can challenge the laws and say, hey, it's unconstitutional. But most of the time, when it comes to criminal defense laws, nobody's going to challenge it because they think it's a good law, because they're going to say, well, the legislature passed it, the governor signed it, it's now into law. The defense attorney has a client that's charged with that law, they challenge it, say it's unconstitutional. Trial court will say, nah, good enough, or they'll say, you're right. Then it goes through the appellate process, and it's ultimately decided. But people just can't ignore the law. There's lots of laws that I think that are stupid, all right? I think there's lots of laws that should be ignored. But ultimately, that is the law, and if you get charged with it, you have to follow it. It's the job of the executive branch to enforce all laws, whether they like them or not. And it's the court's laws to follow the law, and they can't just change it because they don't like it. The method of changing it is you have the legislature change it, okay? Just like in the Constitution. You don't like the Constitution? There's a method to change it. You just don't say, oh, things are bad, we need to just get rid of it. But most people simply don't like it, and they want to just, make something go away. Let's take a look at this here. Was there a question there from April? Let's see. Let's see here. Right? Oh, it looks like, well, thank you, April. We appreciate that super chat. Obviously, as you could see, when a super chat comes up, it catches my attention because it's in big, bold, bright stuff there. But April, thank you. Appreciate that. Even with no question. Let's see here. Someone has a reptilian research. People get confused about the meaning if the Sixth Amendment, the Old Testament translated, reads, you shall not murder. A kill is not a murder. I'm not sure I stand that. The Sixth Amendment, though, doesn't really get into. I mean, the Sixth Amendment is your right to counsel, confronting witnesses. Yes, I'm not sure how that flows, but April, no question, just thank you. Well, I appreciate that. Thank you very, very much. Someone's saying the camera is out of focus. Kyle? I don't know. Maybe it's buffering. We have. And, like I said, if there's one thing I've learned since doing our channel here is that no matter what you do, what you say, you can make no one happy. But that's okay. I've had 25 years of practicing criminal defense law, all right? I tell you, as a criminal defense attorney, some days your stock is so high, you are the best, you are the greatest thing ever. Greatest thing since sliced bread, literally. And then you lose the case and people don't want to pay their final bill. They're the biggest bag of trash. You're the biggest bag of trash ever. And frankly, as I tell clients, as a defense attorney, I am not the one that has created the facts that have brought us all here together, okay? I am working with what is given to me. Obviously, we try to find more facts if there's facts out there that are reasonably related to the case. We can't lie. We can't make things up, which lots of people think that attorneys do. Yeah, no, we can't. And so it prepared me for the YouTube channel experience for sure. You pause too much. You smack your lips. I think I've heard just about everything. Why is your camera angle like this? Your camera angle's to that. The mic's too close. Why do you use a mic? Why are you on this time of day? I mean, and I'm not complaining. I get it. It's funny, okay? I was telling somebody a story the other day. We had a trial setting 3 times. And ultimately, we're ready to go to trial. The DA finally figured out that they couldn't prove their case, and they dismissed it. And my fee was, here's this thing, and then there's the trial fee. And in our fee agreement, the non-trial and then the trial fee. And from the time that we got the case dismissed, that I had prepped for 3 times, shown up, finally got the case dismissed. We didn't have to go to trial, but we got the result that we wanted. From the time that I got back to the office, the client had called and wanted to know if they got their trial fee back since we didn't go to trial. And I literally, wouldn't say I just about lost it, but I wanted to lose it. But I don't get that excited about anything related to that stuff like that because that's just what they want. They're like, hey, we didn't go to trial, so why do I have to pay for it? Well, no, you didn't have to go to trial because I was prepped and ready to go. And so, like I said, it's just the way it is. You're the greatest thing since sliced bread or whatever. I once had a case where making I thought it was a brilliant argument. Client thought it was a brilliant argument. And it wasn't a great case in the sense that it scared people. And the first question from the jury was, does the defendant have access to our home addresses as well? And I remember thinking, oh, well, that's not good. And then I was asked by, I think, a family member, well, what do you think that means? I'm not sure, but I don't think that's good, okay? And once again, I went from you're the greatest person ever to you're the biggest bag of trash ever. I hate you, you lost my case, etc. I once had a client that said that the prosecuting attorney is better. She's making a better closing argument than you are. I'm going to get up and leave and walk out. And I'm like, sit down. You're not going anywhere. And jury comes back, finds her not guilty. So she had a little egg on her face, and she just kind of, well, I'm sorry, and I always had faith in you. I'm like, yeah, no, you didn't. So it's kind of like this in YouTube world. It just depends on if people agree with you or not, whether they are going to agree with you and whether they're going to follow up and criticize. And don't get me wrong, I have really thick skin, so I can take it. That is, I think, has helped, because I think a lot of people that I've talked to in the little YouTube world don't start channels because they're worried about the public criticism that people will do. And people can be harsh. People can be very harsh. But at my age, you know what? This is me. This is what you get. Whether you like it or not, this is what you get. And I'm going to tell you the good, I'm going to tell you the bad, and I'll tell you the ugly. Okay? And that's just the way it is. I want to be the guy that's, hey, let's talk about the elephant in the room so we can get to the truth. Let's take another super chat here. Jaxie. Scott, do you ever do cases out of a state? Yes, I do. Now, out of complete candor and honesty, I've had people that have hired me to do cases out of state, and I tell them it will cost you a heck of a lot less money because in most states, I'm licensed in Colorado. I'm licensed in federal courts. I've done cases across the country, but you usually have to retain local counsel. So not only then are you hiring one attorney, you're hiring two attorneys. And I will tell people sometimes, like, hey, you may not need me. I mean, I appreciate it. It's nice. If money is no object, I would love to do the case, but you may not need me. There's going to be a lot of added expenses for me to get there. So, I think that it's the kind of situation where, yes, I will do cases. I love going out of state. I love going to do other cases. I love going to courthouses that you've never been to. I mean, in the end of the day, the criminal procedure is all the same. Even on a civil case, it's roughly the same. Little nuances here and there, but everything comes from the Constitution, okay? They may say it a little differently. Some places you may stand right up at the bench. Other places you remain seated. But for the most part, a trial is a trial is a trial. Yeah, let's see here. I think we had another. You have done Amber Geiger case. Let's see. Judy has a question. Scott, is there anything different you would have done on the Amber Geiger case? It's easy to sit back and armchair quarterback, but I don't think that she presented very well in her direct examination. I would not have put her up first in the defense case. I would have waited until all the other witnesses had testified and then reevaluate whether we needed her or not. I don't think that she came across particularly well on the witness stand, but guess what? It's always the defendant's right to testify. Now, here in Colorado, and I know we don't do it in the federal courts, they just say, all right, is the defense going to present a witness in the federal courts? But here in Colorado, we actually advise the defendant, it's your right to testify. You can testify whether it's against your attorney's advice. That's what we call a courteous advisement here. It's based after a case. And then the defendant has to answer and say, if you had enough time to do this, you understand you'll be cross-examined. You could be cross-examined, and here jurors can ask questions in the state of Colorado that you'd have to ask. You could have to be forced to answer questions from the jury if they were legally permissible. Yes. I just don't think she was that great a witness. They had her statements previously. I would have waited. The government had her statements, so why give it to him? Her story can't change that much from the previous statements because then it looks like she's fabricating it now to the story. She's locked into those. And in Texas, they had the sentencing phase. Put her up on the sentencing phase and be absolutely remorseful. But that's where that was my opinion. But I don't think she was a great witness on the stand. Okay, Stephen Lundgren here real quick. Says, I'm not an attorney. I didn't stay at a Holiday Inn, but I can't think of many times to put an accused on the stand. She didn't appear very well when she questioned. I agree with that completely. Even more importantly, I have won more trials where the defendant does not testify. The reason for that is simple. A lot of times you can't put the defendant on the stand, right? You can't put the defendant on the stand if, or any witness, if you know that they're going to commit perjury, all right? And as an attorney, we cannot allow that, and so you can't put them on the stand unless they're going to say, yeah, I got up and I did it. And so oftentimes, and if you put your defendant on the stand, if they have prior felony convictions, that information will come in. There'll be a jury instruction that says you've heard testimony from the defendant or any other witness who has a felony conviction. You may consider that basically as to their credibility. Some people are just not very good at public speaking. Some people get super nervous. They don't let us usually borrow a courtroom with defendants to go in and practice. You can do it in your office, but it's not the real thing until you've actually been in that witness stand and had to testify and listen to the question and answer it and back and forth. Some people just are not good at that, and they freeze up on the witness stand. But also, more importantly, is when you put a defendant on the witness stand, it goes from looking at all of the evidence that's been presented by the prosecution, who always has the burden of proving their case beyond a reasonable doubt, to each and every element of the offense charged. And did the government prove that case? Remember, the defense doesn't have to prove or disprove anything. The defense could literally sit there and play cards all day and do nothing and get up and say, the government has failed to prove their case, and win. I've done that. I've had cases where I've asked little to no questions. But when you put the defendant on the stand, in light of all those other things I just spoke about, at that point, it really kind of shifts from overall, did the government prove their case, to do we believe the defendant? And, just like we were talking about, people in the public realm can be harsh. Well, so can jurors. If they think that somebody is lying, or they didn't like their shoes, or they have a bit beady little eyes, those are the kinds of things that jurors consider. And as a defense attorney, you have to be cognizant of that. Will this jury just like my client? Okay. But I've one more: when the defendant does not testify. Let's see. Laura, let's see. Why are nonviolent violations of OP not expungable? OP. Let's see. I'm not sure what OP means. I'm sorry, Laura. I'm sorry. But expungement usually relates to juvenile cases, and sealing usually relates to adult cases. So I'm just not sure. Adrian, are you a private practicing defense, meaning you can choose your cases? Yes, I can. And, everybody's entitled to a defense. We still take and do cases every now and then when the court says, hey, we have a case, public defender's a conflict, would you take that case? I mean, frankly, and some of those are the most interesting cases. And frankly, I like the difficult cases. I was just talking about that the other day with an attorney. I want the difficult cases. I want the case that nobody thinks we could ever win. Those are the cases that I like. They're challenging. You always learn something. You really get to dig deep into a case. That's what I really, really like. Oh, protection orders. OPs, orders of protection. So protection order. Yeah. Protection orders are normally in a criminal case, they stay on while the case is pending and while a defendant is on probation. And then usually it's a mandatory protection order in the criminal case. If somebody gets a civil protection order, those usually remain in place indefinitely unless the person who sought the protection order somehow had a change of heart and wanted to not have it there in place anymore. So hopefully that answers your questions. Let's see here. Deborah, are complete case files available to the public in a case, or is it just the court transcripts and what they want to release? It depends on the state, Deborah, of the amount of information that's released. I am personally of the opinion that the court files are, in fact, public records, and people should be allowed to go get them. And in most cases, you can. If you want to go pull a court file, and today everything's pretty much electronic. It used to be you had to go down and pull the file, photocopy it, and do it. Today it's electronic. You buy access to most case files, and they're there. Transcripts, the court reporters actually at least here in Colorado, own those transcripts. So if you want them, you have to buy them. Usually at I've seen as high as $3 a page. So it really just just depends on the state where you can get it. Some cases, if it's involving children or sexual assault type matters, those are restricted for privacy reasons. So hopefully that answers your question. Let's see here. Letty, do you accept payment plans from clients? Yeah, half up front, half in 30 days. It's usually the way it works. We're not a bank. And a lot of people think, oh, I got payment plans. Yeah, I'll work with clients depending on the case because most people don't have their criminal defense fund. I've always said for years, thank God for parents and grandparents because they pay people's retainers fees, okay? And so I'll work with people. A lot of it's a gut check. You see if you trust them. If they're a previous client, have they paid in the past? If you paid me in the past and you stiffed me or you owe me money, you got to pay me that first before I represent you. And this time I want it all in full. But we're not a bank. Put it on your credit card. You can pay somebody else back, but we don't finance cases like that. Let's see here. Was there another super chat that I saw? Let's see here. Question: will Amber be on a protected wing in the prison? Really, probably to begin with, for sure, just because of her status as a police officer. But as time goes by, she may go into non-protective custody. Let's see, Andrea. Can one take the stand on certain medicine, for example, Xanax? And I'm sure people take medications all the time when they're on the stand. You obviously want people to be sober on the stand. You want them to be clear and understand what's taking place so that, we get to the truth. But if it affects their ability to understand clearly what's going on, then yeah, that's going to be a huge problem. You can't do that. Okay. Hello from Denmark. Let's see here. Jody Aris is full of anything. Let's see here. I can't see that. Okay, Stephen Lundgren. Yeah, Chesty Puller. A lot of people. Chesty Puller, Lieutenant General Chesty Puller, one of the greatest Marines ever. I think somebody asked me this question the other day, and I responded. Yes, he is a Marine's Marine. When surrounded in the Korean War by the Chinese, his response was good. We've got him right where we want him. He was a fighter. He had received 5 Navy Crosses, which is just right below the Medal of Honor. He was a complete stud. He was probably a completely politically incorrect guy. He was down in the Banana Wars, Korea. I'm not sure if he made it to Vietnam. I know his son made it to Vietnam, but unfortunately was severely injured and I think ultimately wound up taking his own life. But Chesty Puller is the Marines Marine, and as someone that served in the Marine Corps, both enlisted and as an officer, I don't know. I had that picture on the wall in my office when I was a judge advocate in the Marine Corps, and I'm not sure who gave it to me or what the circumstances were, but I have kept it for years and years. I mean, I got it back to almost 20 years ago, so. I don't know. It's just a cool picture, and it's Chesty. I even had one of my dogs. I named him Chester and called him Chesty because, for Chesty Puller. Let's see here. Where are we going from here? Kyle, you see anything that jumps out at you? So let's see here. Let's see here. Happily let him get this barred. Gee, I hope they're not talking about me.
One person asked, do you ever worry about your well-being with dealing with?
Oh, should I ever worry about my well-being as a criminal defense attorney? I can tell you 2 real quick stories. Whether I should be worried about my well-being. I once had a case, and this is probably some 15 years ago. And the client, he was kind of a punk. Stupid case. He just blew it out of proportion. Just wasn't a real quick thinker, so to speak. Anyway, he comes to the office one day. It was a Saturday morning, and he's in there with his mom, and he didn't like the offer from the DA, and he thought I should have been able to make it better. And I was like, listen, I've talked to the DA. This is what's going on, et cetera, et cetera. And then all of a sudden, he kind of has a hoodie on, and he takes from his back waistband a gun, and he sets it on the table. And it's basically like, all right, the deal's going to get better. And his mom freaks out because there's a gun. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, are you serious? And my bat here that I had made at a Rockies game, I had it there. And I just kind of said, you know what? First of all, you're going to put that away. Second of all, you're going to leave my office. And 3, I am no longer your attorney. Immediately withdrew and moved on. And that was just kind of a weird situation. And I didn't think the guy was actually going to do anything. I think he just was such a simpleton that he just thought, well, I'll just resort to violence. That's going to change something. Well, it actually, made it worse. And so be it. And the other one was a case where it was a horrific case, probably one of the worst cases I've ever handled. And the parents of the victim in this horrendous case were apparently coming through security and had a collection of scissors and crochet hooks and things of that nature, but apparently no other crocheting items. And my client, who was ultimately convicted of doing terrible things, freaked out and just couldn't believe it. And he was concerned, like, you're not going to let anybody get me, are you? You're not going to let them get me, are you? And I think to myself, let's see. You are going with the sheriff when we're done here today, behind the magic door back to your prison cell, your jail cell. And I'm going to be walking to my car by myself. So, and I guess I did have a murder case once where the family of the victim drives by and, holds their finger out like a gun as they drive by, and I just kind of wave. And I remember calling the district attorney saying, hey, will you tell your family it's nothing personal. I'm just doing my job. And, don't worry about it. It's funny because a couple weeks later, they're like, hey, those family members are really bad dudes. You need to be careful. You want to escort going in and out of the courthouse? Yeah, nah, it didn't. They calmed down. And, I think they're really going to be upset because my client walked on a homicide case. But that's just the way it goes. So let's see here. Let's see. Scott, have you ever run to be a prosecutor in your district? No. Yeah, I need a panic button in my guess. Now, the funny thing is, they have panic buttons in the jail when you go meet with if you have a client in custody. If anything happens, you hit the little red button, and everybody's supposed to come running and protect you. I've never had to do that in custody at all. I've never been worried about a client. I've been in some intense yelling matches with clients, trying to explain to them certain points, pieces of evidence, and what's going to be the result. But I've never felt anyway threatened. For the most part, clients, they know you're trying to do the best job. Clients know they're scared. Most people, whether you get charged with a little DUI or you're charged with homicide and everything in between, most people have never been through this. And even if they have, guess what? I'm telling you, they're still scared to death, okay? They're still scared to death just by going through this process. Are they going to prison? What's going to happen to their family? All those kinds of things. It's just a reality for that. So, So paid for defense. Let's see here. My guess is the Dallas Police Officers Association paid for her defense. Do you think they represented well? I was wondering if the Police Protective Association down there paid for the defense. My guess is yes. I just got busy. I didn't have enough time to look it up. But the attorney that represented her was a former DA. Lots of time. I mean, apparently he's a very good defense attorney. His style is different than mine, that's for sure. But you know what? You got to do your own style in court. You can't be somebody else and do something that doesn't necessarily work, because the jury can see right through that. A jury can see if you're trying to BS them. So you have to be as truthful and honest as you can. I know a lot of people think, oh, you're just a defense attorney, you'll say anything. Yeah, no, we can't. I mean, there are ethics, there are rules of ethics. You can't put on perjured testimony. You can't put up people that you know are going to lie. You don't do that. You have the evidence, and you present the evidence, and you can argue the reasonable inferences drawn from the law, from the reasonable inferences drawn from the evidence, or the lack thereof from the evidence. So it's really it just really it is straightforward. Okay. Let's see. Oh yeah, Amber's attorney prosecuted Darlene Rotier. That's, I believe, the case where she was wrongfully convicted. Jennifer, speaking of electing prosecutors, not enough people pay attention to local elections, is what Jennifer is saying. It's true. I mean, those are the type of elections that really matter. That's where the rubber meets the road in everyday life. If you have some prosecutor that is going completely overboard and not prosecuting everybody to the fullest extreme and being harsh and not looking at then the people are the ones that put them in office, and they can take them out as well. Then you have other people that are, run to be a prosecutor that, think that no one should ever go to jail and should never be prosecuted for anything. Well, guess what? Your job as prosecutors to enforce the law, whether you like it or not. If not, you need to do it. You need to quit your job, find a new one. Let's see here. What the truth is, he probably don't even know. What's your opinion of Alan Dershowitz? I mean, I don't know Alan Dershowitz. I know he was a professor at Harvard, does commentary. I think every now and then I see him on some TV. I don't know the man personally. I have nothing bad to say about him. I mean, he's a very smart lawyer. I don't have any negative to say about him at all. He, would never be accused of not zealously representing his clients at all. I think he's a very fine attorney. All right. Let's see here if there's anything else. If not, I think we'll. Where's that?
Amy Furman, do you read books in your free time?
Do I read books in my free time? Sometimes.
What free time?
I don't have a lot of free time. And when I do have some free time, the last thing I probably want to do is read, because that's what I do all day is read, write, read, and write. So I really like, if I'm in the car, to listen to audiobooks or something along those lines. So if I really have a book that I really like, I like to listen to it in the car because I just don't, my day usually ends, seems like, about 9 p.m. And literally from the time we wake up in the morning, it's just go, go, go. Having cases, managing a law firm that has 4 other attorneys plus staff, that takes up the better part of my day. And Kyle can probably attest to the fact that my days usually don't go out as you think they will. It always takes longer. And even when I say, hey, Kyle, I'll be ready in 2 minutes, that sometimes means about 30 minutes, kind of like today, because things come up and you have to take care of the clients. Question, Scott, will Judge Tammy Kemp have any consequences for, hugging Geiger? I can't imagine so, no. I guess somebody could submit a complaint with their judicial commission, but I'm not sure what for. For being nice, for being respectful, for looking at everybody as an individual. I don't think so. And that's, judges get a lot of crap. Okay. And, some states have judges that are elected, they run for office. They run for their seat on the bench. Here in Colorado, there's a nominating committee, and then they send up 3 names for the judgeship that's open to the governor. The governor appoints them for a temporary term of 2 years, and then they have to stand for retention by a vote to the electorate, and then every 6 years thereafter. And, people can comment on whether someone would be a good judge. I've written letters for people that have been applying for judges to say that they would be a good judge. I've been called by nominating commission people who are doing the interviews, doing the background, the due diligence, because they always have to list people that they've done trials with. And so they put me as a reference. And some people I say, hey, you know what? I think they would be a great judge. And one of the biggest things that I look for in a judge is, first, will they treat everyone in their courtroom with dignity and respect? Okay? Yes, there's always going to be that knucklehead defendant that's going to be rude, disrespectful, whatever. And that's going to be, but at the end of the day, can the judge look at it and say, you know what? I've tried to treat everyone with dignity and respect. I'm not going to be walked over as a judge, but everybody knows that I can be fair. That's what people want, a fair judge. And so I always, even when I do my voir dire, we are selecting the jury who is the judge of the question of fact. Did something happen or not? Okay. And I tell them at the end of the day, whether we win, lose, or draw, we want to be able to say, did we have a fair trial? Okay. That's what it boils down to. And I've told that to clients. I said, listen, hey, I went to trial. We lost, didn't break our way. We knew it was tough, or, hey, that's the way the cookie crumbles, so to speak. But guess what? This judge gave you a fair trial. That's all you could really ask for, okay? Only once have I ever said at a sentencing, Judge, you didn't give my client a fair trial. And this particular judge looked a little taken aback, and I had known this judge before they were a judge, and maybe that's why I felt even more comfortable saying it. But this particular judge went completely out of their way to not be fair. When the prosecution hadn't done things, she's like, well, I'm just going to let them do it now anyway. Okay, that's not fair. Those aren't the rules. The rules, that's what they're there for. Everybody knows the rules. They're all written beforehand. And if I know the rules better than the prosecutor, okay, I'm playing with the rules. That's the way it's supposed to be done. So judges, should this Judge Kemp, would I want to judge if I was the defense attorney crying during testimony? Oh, hell no. Okay. But judges are human as well. And at the end of the trial, she came over, she's, gave her a hug. I guess she gave her her personal Bible. She, that's the kind of judge that, as a prosecutor, one of them looks like, hey, we've looked at this case, this is an appropriate sentence, she's going to do it. But as a defense attorney, say, hey, this is also a judge that's going to look and say, this person over here has a life too. They have a story as well. And she obviously listened to that. And for whatever reason, she thought that would be an appropriate thing to do. But so I don't think, can you make a big deal about it? Yes. Do I think it's that big a deal that some people are making a big deal about it? No, I don't. But I think that, at the end of the day, it's not going to make any difference. She's going to go do her time. She's going to get out. She'll probably, write a book or, get out of prison and be a motivational speaker, about how she changed her life and make lots of money. So I don't think anyone needs to worry about her. Okay, see, not letting one of their experts review change the outcome. I think it was, from a defense perspective, for first-degree murder, 10 years, total gift. The expert, I thought the judge was correct in denying their expert. Yeah, I mean, just because you have an expert doesn't mean it all comes in. They have to come in under what they call rules 701, 702. Is it going to assist the trier of fact? And I remember the judge stating, how is this going to assist the trier of fact? It has an expert has to provide something that isn't just of necessary common sense. You know, that's what we do. Yeah, you know, let's see. Phoenix here. Scott is real. He's a realist. Yeah, I am a realist, okay? I don't like to talk about what things are going to be, what they should have been. Let's talk about the way they are, because I have to deal with real facts, real law on a daily basis. You know, you want to go talk about where the law should actually be? Yeah, I think where it is, and I'll make arguments objecting and making those objections constantly, because somebody somewhere much smarter than me will put that in an appellate brief, and maybe someone will finally agree. You know, it's not like the legislature comes and asks me, hey, Scott, what rules should we change? You know, we have criminal bar associations that do it, but, you know, to try and make change. But legislators don't usually care. So I have to deal with what's actually there. Scott, would you want to be a judge? You know, yeah, I've asked that question all the time. I used to get that question asked all the time by my now ex-mother-in-law, because I think she was really didn't like the fact that I did criminal defense work. And every time I would see her, so don't you think you'd want to be a judge? Would you like to apply to be a judge? No, not really. You know, if you're a county court judge, oh my gosh, you're doing DUIs, domestic violence cases, and you're going to do mostly guilty pleas all day long, 4 or 5 days a week. Oh my God, I would rather put a hot fork in my eye than do that on a daily basis. A district court judge where they handle felonies, you know, and then they handle civil matters, that perhaps would be a much more interesting job. But in the state system, no, I would not want that job at all. Once again, huge dockets, taking guilty pleas. Then if you're not doing a guilty plea, you know, you squeeze a trial in the other 3 to 4 days that you have available. Staffs are overworked. Most state court judges here, you don't get law clerks. If I was going to be a judge, if I ever wanted to be a judge, the judge to be is a federal judge. U.S. District Court judges get staff. You get staff attorneys to help you. The appellate court judges have huge staffs, beautiful offices, beautiful courtrooms, and for the most part, that they have staff that helps write their opinions. So no, I have no desire to be a judge, and frankly, it would be a pay cut. What's that big silver thing in the corner? Okay. So some of you know, hopefully some of you know by now, or you may know it by now, that I fly. I have an airplane. We sometimes jokingly refer to it as CrimeTalk 1 or Reisch Law Firm 1. And it should be fixed. In fact, I just received a bill for it just the other day. And so I love planes. I love flying. I love aviation. Anything aviation related, I love it. So anyway, this is part of a propeller. And so years ago, I saw one of these. I think I went to the Living Legends of Aviation award with some friends out in Beverly Hills, California. And, you know, like it was the coolest thing ever. I mean, you have astronauts, in the same room with you. John Travolta, who's a big pilot, I think was the MC. Elon Musk was sitting next to me, and he was getting an award for, not next to me, but the next table over. But he accidentally bumped into me moving out of his chair. So that was like my brush with greatness, so to speak. And they had one of these like at an auction, one of these polished propellers, right? but they were ridiculously priced. I mean, super ridiculously priced. And so I was out at the airport one day and somebody said, oh, yeah, somebody's got some extra propellers in one of the maintenance shops. So I called him up and I said, how many do you have? He goes, how many do you want? I said, oh, I want one. And I think he told me he had 6 or something, or maybe 10. And I thought, give them all to me. So then I took them to a guy, and they polished this up. It's completely polished. And I have some. I've got one at home. I've given one to my son when he went to the Air Force Academy. I gave him that, and he's now a pilot. He has it in his home. And it's just, hold on one second. This is kind of cool. So this is an actual propeller, and all propellers are not made out of wood anymore. They're made out of aluminum. And so when they strip away everything, and then they sandblast it, and then they polish it, and it turns out to be this. And they come in various, I've a couple of various different sizes. I used to have this in the conference room in my office. We've got one in my conference room, and I just think it's the coolest thing ever. So I'm like almost like an artist or something, right? Right, Kyle? It's like a sculptor. I've actually got a couple. I thought maybe one of these days I'll start a YouTube channel about flying, and maybe I can give one of these bad boys away. I mean, it's a little more cool. It's a lot cooler than a mug, but look at that. So anyway, you can find these online for a couple $100 to a couple. I've seen them as high as like $10,000. So I figured I'll just go make my own. And it depends on the size of the propeller as well. So let me see if hopefully that won't fall down on me now. So, all right. I think, let's see if there's any last minute questions we can talk about. Thanks for taking the time. I do truly appreciate everybody tuning in. Like I said, kind of a big week. We hit that 10 million mark, and I'm sure there's some people out there on YouTube that hit that super fast, and much faster than I did. But that was kind of a number I kept watching on one of the little stats we get. It was really cool, and the fact that we have 63,000 subscribers, boy, is that humbling as well, because we really do try to put out a good product, and we try to be straightforward with everybody and just tell you the facts, and here it is, and try and tell you this is my opinion, or this is my analysis, or this is what I do. We're not trying here to change anybody's minds. Frankly, if you guys would we don't need a bunch of people that say, oh my gosh, whatever Scott says is right. You know what? Everybody makes mistakes, not always right. And, just ask you could ask lots of people. I make mistakes, and I don't have all the right answers. I'll just give it to you the best way I can with the information that I have. And if the information changes, guess what? My opinion may change. So it's been a big week for us. Thank you. I appreciate everybody tuning in. If you like the channel and you haven't subscribed, please subscribe, hit that bell, leave a notification so that you get notifications of when we go live or when we put out new content. Really do appreciate it. And have a great day. We'll be talking to you soon. And Monday, there's going to be something big. Well, we hope it's big. I hope you like it. Talk to you later.